Hello and happy new year. Welcome back to another episode of The PA is In. I'm pulling back the curtain in today's behind the scenes episode to share an important reminder, some awesome wins, and just some general positivity to launch a new year together. Have you ever had a patient stop back by your office with something so thoughtful, like a handwritten thank you note, or they've given you a hug? Or have you had a patient come to their follow up visit moved to tears and so incredibly grateful for the care that you gave them, for the diagnosis that you made, or the pain that you relieved, or even the compassion and listening ear that you provided? This positive feedback is what we all need in order to keep going. It reminds us that what we are doing is the right thing, that we are on the right path, that we are doing good, and that we are making a difference in the world. Here's what has me thinking about feedback and follow up today. Recently, two separate clients of mine reached out to offer positive feedback and the ultimate result of their negotiation consult with me this year. I want to note that this follow up and feedback came 6 months after their initial consultation. These negotiations took time and persistence, and in one case, teamwork. It took the providers not giving up, even when the first response was negative or the administration was initially resistant to what they were asking. So I want you to meet the first client. I'll call this client Anne. Anne and I had a negotiation consult back in July. She works in a medical subspecialty and has been in the same place in the same specialty since she graduated. Her employer is a large health network where their group has gone through many changes lately. They had a new chief physician, new administration, a lot of staff and provider turnover. In fact, just before our negotiation call, several other PAs, NPs, and physicians had handed in their notice, further increasing the burden on the providers who hadn't left. Things were looking pretty grim, with 4 providers having given notice in the previous month alone. So, this client was gearing up for a performance review, and she was at the end of her rope with feeling just overburdened by work, frustrated by her stagnant compensation, and like she didn't have time to get her charting done. The administration was simultaneously rolling out a program that decreased the length of new and follow up patient visits. So, as you can imagine, in this situation, morale was low and compensation was right there with it, which is a very bad combination for retention. If you've ever been in this situation where morale is low and bad things are happening and change is happening and it feels out of control, and also you feel underappreciated or underpaid, it's just a bad combination. So this client, Anne, had worked in the same specialty for her entire career as a PA. She hadn't seen any real significant jumps in her income throughout that time. Sure, she had the 1 to 3% cost of living or merit increase that came from performance eval some years and not others, depending on how the network was doing. But overall, she felt very behind in her earnings. And this was compounded by the fact that she was working her butt off. So she was picking up, she was covering all these in baskets for other providers who had left. She was seeing more patients who had been rescheduled from other providers' schedules. She was seeing more complex patients without time to chart prep beforehand, and this inability to chart afterwards because she was so busy with shorter visits to see another patient. Does this sound like you? Does this sound like this has ever happened to you where they're asking you to do more and more and more, and no discussion about compensation has been had? The assumption has been that you will, because you're a human giver, because you are a people pleaser, take care of those patients and step up to meet the need that they are presenting to you. So on our call, I distinctly remember her saying, "It is a mess over here, Tracy," as she described the situation. She also shared that as a new mom, she really wanted to cut back on her hours. On our call, we discussed what her ideal hours would be: a 4-day work week with some work from home flexibility and some blocked admin time so she could get her charting done and her in basket cleaned out so she didn't have to take work home in the evenings when she wanted to hang out with her new babies. So dropping from 1.0 FTE to zero point 0.8 FTE was her ideal. She wanted to go from 5 days a week to 4 days a week. So we unpacked briefly the conversation about staying versus leaving. So ultimately, she said, "Hey, I actually really love my job and my patients, but I will only stay if they pay me more, if they make it worth my while to stay, especially amidst all of these changes and everyone leaving and the increasing burden that I'm carrying right now. And if they were willing to support her desire to go to that zero point 0.8 FTE and have appropriate admin time to get her work done within the bounds of work." So we created a plan on how to approach this negotiation. We agreed on specific salary details, what and how she was going to ask for, and a strategy for what she was going to ask for first in terms of pay, in terms of patients per day, and then how she was going to lead into the eventual going part-time. So she really wanted the admin team to buy in on like, hey, if I'm going to stay, I need a retention bonus, I need to get paid more, and also we need to transition to a point where I can go to 4 days a week. So it was really this co-creating of a plan with the admin team. And we really worked on some of the phrases to say and how to say, this will only work for me if, and how to make it meet the needs of the practice too. Because ultimately, the greatest outcome of a negotiation is when admin or the network or the employer is happy to continue to have you work there and you are happy to keep showing up with what they're compensating you with. So 6 months later, I get this message from her in my inbox. This took a lot of time and many conversations and lots of dedication on Anne's part. She continued to tell administration, that won't work for me. It needs to be this. And to use some of the skills and the strategies that we talked about. So she followed up and she shared with me the outcome of this negotiation. So the outcome was a $7,500 retention bonus, right? So everyone is headed out the door. So it's really important to them that they retain this revenue generating person. A 13% raise, a salary from around 110 to above 125 a year, and a drop from 1 to 0.8 FTE with 3.5 hours of dedicated admin time. So Anne shared that they now have time to see her patients and they get their charts and in basket handled and they can get home to their family without feeling stressed. This change to a 0.8 FTE brought another day that they could be home with their kids or even get to the dentist, right? So to get things done, which is a new priority of theirs as a new mom. So finding this follow-up information in my inbox brought me to tears. I had dozens and dozens of PA negotiation consults this year, and we don't always get follow-up, right? So some people are lost to follow-up, just like patients who are lost to follow-up. Not 100% of the negotiations get this amazing outcome, but I got this message and I was just so happy. I think number one, because this is a client that I reflect so much with. I see myself in her. She is this new mom. I was that new mom, several years ago. And when I was feeling that overburdening, burned out, I wished that there was a resource like a negotiation consult. I wish that people were talking about the fact that even when you work for a large network, that there is the ability to craft a position that works for you, especially if you're in a job where they have seen your value and realized the amazing asset that you are. She did it. She kept working and kept negotiating. She kept going back to her notes from our initial negotiation consultation and remembered why it mattered for her to get paid more. And the fact that she wanted to stay clinical at a job that she truly loved because she wanted to keep seeing her patients and she enjoyed the work that she was doing. She just didn't enjoy how she was being compensated for that work. And also, how she was being burdened by that administrative load outside the hours of work. So what was Anne's return on investment? Over 150 times what she invested in the negotiation consult in terms of increased income this year alone. So awesome. So the next client that was so kind to follow up with me, her name, we'll call her Lindsay. I should have said earlier, the names and some of these details are changed because obviously we want to protect client anonymity. So Lindsay came to me on behalf of her group of PAs and NPs who were getting ready to renegotiate their compensation package. So this group of providers worked for a smaller private practice that had recently restructured. And with that restructuring came new management and new contracts. So historically, this PA NP group had been paid base plus bonus and their bonus had been based on productivity, specifically revenue. So the new suggestion for a productivity structure was unclear and confusing. We sort of teased out what the organization was suggesting in terms of a new structure for the bonus, and we ran the numbers, and we realized that not only was their base decreasing, but their bonus was going to end up decreasing. We based those calculations on their actual revenue history, which each person, we did a group call. So each person on the call said, hey, this is what historically I've been bringing in per month or per year, because we have these reports on our gross revenue. And we could actually say, okay, if that's what you brought in next year, your bonus would look like this. It would start paying out in this month. And we really wanted to make sure it was feasible for financially for them. It's okay to accept a lower base if you have a higher productivity bonus. If you are pretty sure you can hit it, if there's transparency, there's a lot of ifs. If you're going to take a lower base and a higher bonus, you got to be pretty confident that number one, you can live on the base, and number two, that bonus is going to come. Because if it's just a carrot and it's outrageous and there's no way you're going to reach it, accepting that lower base is just going to hurt you in the long run. The great part about this situation is the majority of these NPs and PAs were established providers with a strong patient base. They had patients who considered them to be their provider, and that loyalty was an important part of this negotiation. They also worked as a group. So after they were asked one by one to sign this new contract, this group of providers banded together, and they agreed that as one, they had higher bargaining power than each of them individually. These ladies were organized. They had an unofficial leader who was like the spokesperson, who was the liaison going back and forth between administration. Zero of them had signed that new contract, and they each knew their worth because, well, first of all, they knew that they were really great at what they did. And second of all, every month they got a report that said their numbers that helped them to really know for sure that they were making money for that practice. We also wanted to work into this negotiation their specific site preferences. So, in the past, with previous administration, they didn't travel a whole lot. There was 1 to 2 offices close to home, which was their main sites, and they weren't asked to go to the site that was an hour and a half away with a longer commute. And with changes in administration and a new restructuring and ownership, they wanted to make sure that written into that agreement was their site preferences, where they would see the majority of their patients, so that they weren't subject to as much of sort of that shell game of like, oh, so and so left. Now we're going to ask you to go to this office, which is much further away and less convenient to you, because commuting time is time away from your family and time that you are really spending getting to work. So we worked on a strategy to ask for a couple of things: a more generous base, one that each person on that call could live on and be happy with, even if next year was their worst revenue year ever. And then we set about the business of tackling the productivity bonus. We wanted to structure the productivity bonus in a way that the practice benefited, so it was enticing to them and they knew they were going to make their money back off of these providers, but also that the providers felt like, hey, I'm being valued. And when I see an extra patient and when I squeeze someone in and when I do a little bit more, I get paid a little bit more. And that you can choose to, when you incentivize that, then you make that decision about an add on based on like, hey, I know this could result in more money in my paycheck next month, that bonus, versus no, I just don't want to do it, both of which are totally fine. This negotiation was a huge success. And Lindsay messaged me in December because she said, hey, I just wanted to let you know, so supportive. I really appreciate all your help in this process. We all are super grateful to have reached an agreement that feels good to us and feels good to this new employer. And the reason I'm messaging you right now is my new huge bonus, her words, just hit my bank account just in time for like last minute Christmas shopping. And that feels really great. So Lindsay's return on investment, which was just her, not the 4 other people on the call when we did this group negotiation, was more than 250 times in that end of the year bonus alone. Productivity bonuses are not the enemy. There is absolutely a way to do it that benefits the practice, but that also benefits you and gives you some motivation where, unlike being straight salary, when you're straight salary, when you work more, when you see an extra patient, when you stay late, you make less you make less. You make less per hour, you make less per patient. The more work you do, the less appreciated you feel. So having a productivity bonus can be a great way to help to overcome some of that resentment and that feeling like you're getting taken advantage of. The more work you do, the same amount of money you make when you're salaried. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, most PAs don't graduate with the skills in negotiation that they need in order to tackle things like these two examples of negotiation. And therefore, they don't feel like they're being compensated at the top of the pay scale or even at the middle of the pay scale for PAs in their area, in their specialty, in the setting that they work in. In these negotiation calls, I help those PAs to gain negotiation skills and strategies so that they can ultimately earn a paycheck that they're proud of, regardless of where they live in the country or the specialty or setting that they work in inside of healthcare. So if you are listening to this and you're like, I would like a massive $40,000 productivity bonus, or I would like to have a retention bonus and be able to make more and go part-time. If you ever want to learn, if you ever are curious what learning to negotiate looks like, the process is simple. So there's a link in the show notes. We set up an hour-long consultation where we discuss what you're getting paid, what you're earning, where you are in your career, where you want to go, and what your income goals are. Together, we put together a plan for the best way to approach your specific situation, what conversations to have, and how to have those conversations, what the strategy is, what to ask for first, second, third, and what to not ask for at all. You walk away at the end of this call with a plan, a specific plan tailored to you and your situation, with ways to increase your administrator's awareness of the value that you add to the practice that ultimately will result in an increase in your paycheck. These years that you are working are potentially the highest income earning potential years of your career. Not negotiating effectively and clearly means that you're leaving tens of thousands of dollars of income in your employer's pocket. That money should be in your bank account. That is something that I feel so deeply, passionately about. My negotiation coaching clients gain the skills to negotiate for new jobs in the future, but also to proactively use at things like annual evaluation as opportunities to increase your income over time. You work hard. You take incredibly good care of your patients. Your employer is really lucky to have you. You should be paid accordingly and get bonus based on what you are actually doing. So if you want to turn $150 at an hour consult and work on your part, persistence and fighting and lots of meetings with your admin team, into $10 or $20 or $40,000 of additional income in 2024, I want you to stop what you're doing, head to the show notes, click the link, book a negotiation consult, or send us an email at themoneypa@gmail.com that says, I want to earn more money. And we will get you all of the details on how to schedule. And because kindness and gratitude begets more kindness and gratitude, I want you to take a moment today to share with someone in your life a thank you or some positive feedback. Tell your colleague how she made your day when she volunteered to take your call shift, or remind your spouse or partner how much you love them. Or tell your kiddo that you are glad that they are a part of your family and you're happy to be driving them to wherever you're driving them if your kids are young enough to need a ride. This feedback that those negotiation clients shared with me was life-giving. Sometimes doing this show, being an entrepreneur, creating content feels so seamless and easy and without any resistance or troubles, and it feels aligned and I feel like it's working. And sometimes it feels hard and uncomfortable. And I wonder if this content is going out into the world and making a difference whatsoever. If you love this show and you feel like it is making a difference in improving your life and creating change in this crazy, wild world of healthcare, could you do me a favor? Could you share this show with a friend or a colleague? Could you head to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you love about the show? Subscribe on YouTube if that is where you're watching. Post on Instagram and tag us at Mrs. Tracy Bingaman, or share on LinkedIn and tag me, Tracy Bingaman, or the PA is in on LinkedIn. Thank you, as always, for joining me for a little behind the scenes look on how it's going over here at life, in work, in business. That is all for today. This PA is out.